Imagine you are a Mongol warrior. All your life, you've raced across endless grasslands, icy winds slapping your face, your horse both your companion and your weapon. You've conquered thousands of kilometers, from China to Eastern Europe, never once tasting defeat. But suddenly, you're ordered onto a ship. Black waves rise like mountains, ocean winds roar louder than your army, and the creaking of wooden planks sounds like bones snapping. Forget fighting. Just standing upright feels like being struck by 1,000 invisible arrows. And here's the mystery. How could the most feared land army in the world, the force that made Asia and Europe tremble, become powerless simply because of the ocean? Sources from Japan, China, even European chronicles all point to the same truth. The Mongols, who were invincible on land, turned fragile once they faced the waves. The question is, why? Was the ocean truly their natural enemy? Or is there another secret that history has been hiding all along? From the very beginning, the Mongols were a people born of the land that had never known the sea, the vast Mongolian steppe, cold, dry, endless. That was their true home. From childhood, Mongol children weren't taught to swim or to sail. They were taught to ride a horse before they could even walk, and to draw a bow before they could speak clearly. The ocean, for them, it was an alien world, a wet, unpredictable realm. No grass for the horses to graze, no solid ground for their feet. The waves always shifting, impossible to predict, impossible to conquer with arrows or swords. And that's exactly what made the Mongols unstoppable on land, but nearly blind when it came to the sea. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, Japan, southern China, the Arab world, the sea had long been a highway of civilization, for trade, for war, for journeys across continents. So when Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, dreamed of conquering Japan in the 13th century, he faced a massive problem. The world's greatest land army had to transform into a naval fleet. And this wasn't just about logistics, it was about mentality. Imagine thousands of warriors used to galloping across open plains, suddenly crammed into narrow wooden ships, rocking endlessly, seasick every time a wave crashed. For the Mongols, the sea wasn't just a physical obstacle, it was a psychological nightmare. Chinese and Japanese records both mention that many Mongol soldiers had no idea how to keep balance on a ship. They brought their horses, their weapons, but they couldn't read the stars, couldn't sense the wind, couldn't master the tides. In short, much unmatched on land, but utterly blind on water. And from here, we see clearly why the story of the Mongols' fear of the sea isn't just a myth. It grew from their culture, from the geography of their homeland, from centuries of habits shaped by the steppe. The steppe was endless, but the ocean was foreign, and that ocean became an invisible wall, one that limited the grand dreams of the Mongol Empire.
The year was 1274. The world trembled at a single name, Kublai Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan. His empire already stretched vast, northern China, Mongolia, Korea, but his eyes glittered with ambition for one more prize: Japan. Japan at the time wasn't a great power, but to Kublai it was invaluable. First, its location was strategic. Second, it was rich in iron and gold. And third, conquering Japan would be a symbol, proof that the Mongols were truly unstoppable, even across the sea to an island nation. But Japan refused to bow. The envoys Kublai sent to Kyoto returned without the submission he demanded. Some were even insulted. For the Mongols, that was humiliation. For Kublai, it was a call to war. And so preparations began. The first invasion fleet was assembled, nearly 900 ships carrying 40,000 troops, a mix of Mongols, Chinese, and Koreans. On land they were monsters, but at sea, that was a gamble. Imagine it, thousands of hardened land warriors crammed into wooden ships, many seasick, many confused about how to survive gaze without solid ground beneath their feet. But the order was clear: cross the sea, conquered Japan. On the other side, Japan was ready. The samurai donned their armor, sharpened their katanas. They knew their enemy was no ordinary foe. This was the Mongol horde, a storm on land. But the Japanese had an advantage. They were fighting at home. They knew their seas. So, when the Mongol fleet landed at Hakata Bay, the first great battle erupted. Samurai clashed with Mongol troops who fought with unfamiliar tactics: gunpowder bombs, poisoned arrows, tight infantry formations, unlike anything Japan had ever seen. The samurai were shocked, but they held. The beach became a bloody battlefield. Japan struggled, but the Mongols couldn't break through either. Night fell. The Mongol army pulled back to their ships, planning to renew the attack at dawn. But then came Japan's deadliest warrior of all, the sea itself. Winds rose, waves swelled. In the dead of night, a storm ripped across the bay. Mongol ships, never built for such wild seas, splintered like toys. Thousands of soldiers drowned, not cut down by katana, but swallowed by the very ocean they had tried to cross.
The year was 1281. Kublai Khan would not accept defeat. The failure of 1274 only enraged him further. If the first armada had sunk, then the second would rise as the greatest storm Asia had ever seen. He gathered more than 4,000 ships, yes, 4,000, and nearly 140,000 soldiers from Mongolia, China, and Korea. Japanese chronicles record it as the largest invasion fleet of the medieval world. Imagine it, thousands of white sails covering the horizon like a massive wall devouring the sea. For Japan, this was not just an enemy, it was the apocalypse arriving from the horizon. On the shores of Hakata, the samurai stood waiting, swords in hand but with heavy hearts. They knew this enemy was far too vast. So Japan made a desperate decision. Along the Hakata coast, they built a long stone wall so the Mongols couldn't land easily. And at night, small bands of samurai slipped into boats, silently boarding Mongol ships, cutting down their enemies and setting vessels ablaze in the darkness. The Mongol fleet was trapped. They couldn't unload troops in the numbers they had planned. Time dragged on, supplies dwindled, morale collapsed. And then the Sea of Japan rose again to fight. A typhoon roared across the waters. Ship after ship overturned, splintered, and sunk.
tens of thousands of Mongol soldiers drowned, claimed not by the sword, but by the storm. Those who struggled ashore were cut down by samurai blades. Out of the mighty armada, only a handful made it back home. In Beijing, Kublai Khan received the news, fury and shame mingling in his heart. All the preparation, all the power, all the ambition swallowed by the Japanese sea. And from that day, one word echoed through Japan: kamikaze, the divine wind. The wind they believed had saved their nation from the Mongol horde.
But the storm was only half the story. The deeper secret lay not in the winds of Japan, but in the very heart of Mongol culture itself. The Mongols were children of the steppe. Their lives were bound to horses, endless grasslands, and the solid certainty of earth beneath their feet. The sea? That was another universe entirely. To them, a vast expanse of water was chaos incarnate, untamable, unpredictable, and worst of all, a place where no horse could run, no grass could grow. On land, the Mongols could crush kingdoms across thousands of miles with nothing but bows and horses. But at sea, they were lost. Chinese chroniclers wrote that many Mongol soldiers were violently seasick, vomiting for days, too weak to fight before the battle even began. Their greatest warriors, who once thundered across continents, collapsed helplessly on swaying decks. So the truth is this: the Mongols were not defeated by the divine wind alone. They were undone by their own nature, a land empire forced to fight in a world they could not understand. And that is the greatest irony. The most unstoppable empire on earth, the conquerors of continents, was humbled not by swords or cities, but by the sea. And so, the Mongol expeditions to Japan became one of the bitterest failures in their history. From hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of soldiers, only a handful returned, not because they were defeated in battle, but because they had challenged something that could never be conquered: the sea and the storm. After that disaster, the Mongols never again dared to launch an invasion of such scale across the ocean. Their emperor, Kublai Khan, who once dreamed of ruling from land to sea, was forced to face the truth that even ambition has its limits. Japan endured, the Mongols withdrew, and history recorded that it was not swords, not arrows, but the sea itself that stood as the final fortress of the rising sun. The lesson? Sometimes the strongest enemy is not the one standing before you, but the world itself, the forces of nature that restore balance in ways beyond human power. As written in a 13th century Japanese chronicle about the kamikaze, the divine wind that saved their land. When men forget their limits, it is nature that will remind them.